So once we've gone through and budgeted all of the accounts, we're now ready to determine what our provisional rates are. Now, one thing I'm going to show you here before I proceed to the provisional rate calculation report is that under Setup and Configuration, we have a proposed contracts screen. This is where we can input cost proposal data. Now, I noted before that we've assigned 3 new hires for a particular cost proposal. And we're presuming then on the front end of the year when we're doing the budget that the work, if we win, will begin at the beginning of the year. So we've budgeted for a full year of hours for these prospective employees. But if that's not the case for you, you would simply budget a fewer number of hours. And then when you do your budget for the subsequent year, you can budget more completely. But one additional feature for this proposal screen is the ability to toggle this information in and out of the budget. So I'm going to check this box to exclude this information from the budget screen. And here I'm going to show you, going back to the personnel screen, that we've already determined salaries for these positions, and we've determined number of hours, and we've determined benefits and all that sort of thing. But now I'm going to go back to the proposal screen, show that we've checked the box to exclude this information from the budget. We'll now come back to the budget start page and we'll run the provisional rate calculation report. This provisional rate calculation report is now bringing in all information in the exact same way that we bring it in for the indirect rate calculation report in the traditional ICAT screens. So here we're seeing each of the cost pools where you can see the content of the cost pool, the allocation base for the cost pool, the rates, and the allocation of the cost pool out to each base element. Looks just like the indirect rate calculation report. But the difference is this information is coming from our budget database rather than from the QuickBooks actual information. So as we scroll through this, you can see that we've developed a provisional fringe rate based on our budget of 33.3%. For our overhead, we've developed an overhead rate of 23.13%, and we've developed a G&A rate of 14.07% on a provisional basis. Now, watch what happens when I come back to this proposal screen and I decide to include that cost proposal information in the provisional rate calculation. Now, what we're looking at is a fringe rate of 33.31%, which didn't change much. I think the previous one was 33.3%, so it's essentially the same fringe rate. But the overhead rate dropped. If we add those new positions, we're taking this indirect cost pool and we're spreading it over a larger base of business. So consequently, we have a lower overhead rate. We went from 23.13% down to 20.13%. So we dropped by 3 percentage points. What this really means for us is that our provisional rate at 23.13% is what we're targeting as we establish a provisional rate proposal with DCAA for any cost reimbursement type contracts. But for new work, when we're anticipating how competitive we want to get in trying to win new work, we know that we don't have to price it at an overhead rate of 23.13%. If we win this work, our overhead rate will drop. So we can actually go down to 20.13%. That's crucial information. And let's look at it for the G&A. Recall that our G&A rate was a little more than 14%. But when we consider this cost proposal information into our allocation base, our G&A rate is now 12.7%. So that's important information for us to know. But in addition to that, let's go back and pull that information back out. Once we budgeted our year without regard to any of this proposal information, what we're able to do is generate the information that we need to submit a provisional rate proposal to DCAA. So on an annual basis, as we go through this budget, we know that we have far greater command and control over our budgeted information. Management can clearly see all elements going into the budget and enable them to have better control over how their year is going to play out. And it gives them a very concise tool for developing their provisional rate information and enables them to print this information out and include it in their provisional rate submission on an annual basis. So we're taking a task that is very cumbersome, where management typically has to do these tasks using spreadsheets, and we're giving a tool that generates these reports and gives management a much better view of how their year is going to operate. Command and control is what this is all about.